In the worst outcome for controversial climate activist Greta Thunberg and others aboard their boat heading for Gaza, the crew is now in Israel after they were towed to Ashdod by Israeli forces. Their boat, the Madlin, has made international headlines for wanting to break Israel's legal blockade on Gaza. ILTV's Shosh Bedrosian is with us now with the details. Shosh, what can you tell us about what happened in the water?
Lidar, in an unbelievable development, social media posts of the Gaza Freedom Flotilla are calling members detained by Israeli forces, quote, hostages in a sick and twisted turn of events. The members, including controversial climate activist Greta Thunberg, willingly boarded a boat from Sicily in an attempt to reach Gaza, although it has a blockade over it to thwart out terrorism, according to Israel, and prevent weapons from reaching Hamas, the terror organization there. The social media activists were detained and their ship was towed to the Ashdod port, where the activists were then handed over to the police. The government said they will be deported to their countries where they came from. Israel is now nicknaming the boat the selfie yacht after social media activists have taken to their online platforms to spread misinformation about the events that unfolded overnight. Israel said the boat was met in the sea, first with a loudspeaker, and then members of the Israeli Navy boarded the ship. Members, including Thunberg, were seen on video willingly taking sandwiches and water from the forces. The group was attempting to bring a small amount of aid into the Gaza Strip, although Israel says they brought less than a truckload on their boat. Thunberg went on her own social media to claim the boat was intercepted and that she was kidnapped by Israeli forces. The 22-year-old has not ever mentioned the 55 hostages that remain in Hamas captivity, nor acknowledged the suffering of the Palestinian people under Hamas rule. Lidar Defense Minister Israel Katz is now saying he informed the IDF to make sure they watch the massacre video that took place on October 7th.
Thank you, Shosh, for the report. Absolutely outrageous. And joining us now with more on the flotilla with the latest is human rights lawyer and CEO of the International Legal Forum, Arson Ostrovski. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, the selfie flotilla has been stopped peacefully by the IDF with sandwiches and water. This was clearly a PR stunt, and we'll get more into that in a moment. But what has the world reaction been to this flotilla so far?
Well, I think you're right. First of all, this was a selfie flotilla. This was not a humanitarian mission, despite the fact that that is how Greta and her crew sought to spin this and portray this. This was essentially a group of self-righteous provocateurs and activists seeking nothing more than a PR stunt and to provoke the Israeli army, something which the IDF did not bite, and therefore I would consider this quite a failed mission from Greta and her crew in that sense. They did manage to get some publicity and, of course, calls from some of the usual suspects from the UN and some of the human rights supposed organizations demanding that the ship be allowed to breach the blockade and reach Gaza. But of course, that did not happen. I think the IDF and the Israeli authorities acted as well as could have been expected under the circumstances to stop this ship.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And, we say PR stunt also in part because the boat was carrying just a few boxes of aid, which really wouldn't have had much or any real impact. And, of course, completely promotes the false narrative that Israel isn't sending in aid to Gaza, which we know it has sent in millions of tons of aids. So why is Israel unable to get this message across to the world?
Well, I think Israel is certainly trying to get this message across, but the reality is if we're dealing in an issue of pure numbers, it's a very difficult task. So we have a lot of challenges ahead of us in terms of the way the media portrays this, in terms of the number of activists that are online. For example, Greta herself has millions of followers, which I suppose leap at every word she says. But I think Israel did quite a good job in this case, not just Israel, but also civil society organizations supportive of Israel in this case, to really expose the hypocrisy of Greta and her crew members, the fact that had they truly cared about helping alleviating the concerns of the Gazan people, they would have directed their aid to the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Had they really cared, they would have spoken out to condemn Hamas for stealing and taxing the aid and viciously beating up Gazan civilians for trying to reach it. They would have certainly spoken out if they truly cared about human rights concerns around the world, whether the famine in Yemen or whether in Boko Haram we've seen children being kidnapped. And of course, they could have raised the plight of the hostages if they truly cared, but they didn't. And I think at the end of the day, they were nothing more than a group of useful idiots and willing pawns for Hamas, only emboldening their propaganda.
Mm-hmm. Now, Greta had the audacity to pre-record a video message and say that she had been kidnapped by the IDF. Never mind the fact that she tried to illegally enter an active war zone. But, I mean, really outrageous that she's calling herself a hostage and that she spent the past week on a yacht publishing pictures of her smiling and enjoying life. And there are 55 actual hostages in Gaza, people who were kidnapped, who are being beaten and starved for months on end. And, you know, I want to ask from a legal perspective, what consequences will there be to her actions? I mean, she did break the law after all.
She did, in fact, break the law. And we should also reiterate that Israel is fully entitled under international law to enforce a blockade of Gaza. They're entitled to this under the London Declaration, under the San Remo Declaration as well. And we also need to remember that in 2011, after the Mavi Marmara, the predecessor flotilla, the UN itself established a panel led by former New Zealand Prime Minister Clive Palmer that also reiterated that, in fact, Israel was entitled to establish a blockade in the area precisely because of the threats emanating from Hamas. So Israel was entitled to establish the blockade and enforce it, and in trying to breach it, of course, Greta was violating not only the rules of international law and engagement, but also Israeli law as well. How we proceed from that, that also is up to the Israeli authorities from what we've seen so far. And I think the Israeli authorities, again, have done this very smartly. Not only did the IDF, I think, act in a very dignified and professional manner in stopping the boat, the defense minister has also said that the boat will be towed to the port of Ashdod, where the contents, which, by the way, is probably less food items than there were flash cameras and photography equipment for their stage show, that whatever aid there was there will be delivered to the people of Gaza through the Humanitarian Foundation. But I think one other important element here as well is that the defense minister said that the crew members, including Greta, will be forced to watch the 43-minute video of the Hamas atrocities from October 7th. I think that will be exceptionally powerful because ultimately this flotilla did nothing other than to promote and embolden Hamas and to whitewash their crimes. So I think it is only fitting that they actually be forced to watch those very crimes and understand the actions which they were seeking to support.
Okay. Absolutely. Arson Ostrovski, thank you so much for joining us and for your insights today.
Thank you.
And the IDF has confirmed the death of Hamas leader Mohammed Sinwar and released a video of his body being extracted from his destroyed command center under the European hospital in Khan Yunis. It's day 612 of the war in Gaza, and the IDF says Hamas is on the brink of defeat. More from ILTV's Steve Lieovitz.
A video released by the IDF shows former Hamas commander Mohammed Sinwar's body alongside that of Rafah Brigade commander Mohammed Shabana. The bodies were taken from a tunnel under the European hospital that had been used by Hamas as a command center. Following an ID process, it's now confirmed that it was Sinwar killed in an IDF strike on the tunnel on May 13th. Also in the tunnel, the IDF located several items belonging to Sinwar, including his ID card and weapons.
We are here in the city of Khan Yunis. This is the European hospital right behind me. The European hospital in Khan Yunis. You can see the very big hole in the ground right in front of it. This is the entrance we opened for a very big command and control compound, Hamas command and control compound. Yet this is another example of the cynical use of Hamas, using civilians as human shields, using civilian infrastructure, hospitals, again and again. We find those infrastructure.
The Army says that military operations are making progress toward the ultimate defeat of Hamas.
And we will dismantle Hamas, because we cannot live with Hamas, with this organization, with this terror organization, right on our backyard, right across our border, the day this war is ending. They dragged us into this war. We didn't start it. We cannot forget who is the aggressor. They are killing their own people. we will do our best.
The IDF announced that Hamas terrorists Arafat Deib, who infiltrated the Nova and Kibbutz Re'im, was killed in a recent IDF airstrike in Gaza. Deib served as chief of a Hamas-run police station. Day 612 of the war in Gaza, Operation Gideon's Chariots, is continuing. Dozens of Hamas operatives were targeted in airstrikes focused in Khan Yunis and southern Gaza. Ground forces in northern Gaza's Jabalia called in airstrikes that killed several Hamas operatives. Dozens of weapons depots, tunnels, and operatives were struck throughout the past 24 hours.
And the U.S.-backed aid group GHF is back on the ground in Gaza, reopening food distribution sites just days after Hamas threats forced a temporary shutdown. More on this now from ILTV's Mayan Hoffman.
The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, GHF, resumed food distribution across Gaza this week after it had suspended operations due to what it called direct threats from Hamas. According to GHF, the threats targeted its staff, including a message warning they were being monitored and would face serious consequences if they continued distributing aid under the quote-unquote guise of humanitarian work. Despite the danger, GHF says it is determined to continue feeding Gaza's civilians. On Sunday, the group distributed 17,000 food boxes at 3 sites in Rafah and central Gaza. And it delivered 11 trucks of supplies directly to community leaders in northern Rafah. These deliveries are part of a new pilot program to bypass Hamas interference by bringing aid directly to civilians instead of centralized depots. A GHF spokesperson said trucks are now delivering boxes directly to people in population hubs, minimizing exposure to threats and reducing crowd pressure at main centers. The foundation has also introduced a women and children only lane to ensure safer and more equitable distribution. Operations are being secured in part by the Abu Shabaab militia, an anti-Hamas armed group reportedly backed with Israeli-supplied weapons. While its leader, Yasser Abu Shabaab, denies collaborating with Israel, Israeli sources have confirmed to the Walla news agency that the militia is protecting distribution convoys and guarding aid centers in Rafah. Since May 26, GHF has distributed nearly 9 million meals. The U.S.-backed nonprofit says it is actively adapting its model and remains flexible under grossly unstable conditions. Meanwhile, Reuters reported that the U.S. is considering a $500 million aid package for GHF via U.S. aid.
And joining us now with more on the latest in the war against Hamas in Gaza is Brigadier General in the Reserves Amil Avivi, founder and CEO of the Israel Defense and Security Forum. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
So it's day 612 of the war in Gaza, and the IDF says it's continuing to make progress towards defeating Hamas. But is there an end in sight?
Well, I think that we are entering a clear timetable. The army is talking about less than 2 months conquering 75% of the Gaza Strip. And conquering means really taking over the whole area and completely destroying all the infrastructure, all the terrorists, the tunnels, the houses that are booby-trapped, everything in those 75%. And this is done while the army continues to topple the leadership of Hamas and really change the whole way it's distributing the humanitarian aid in a way that Hamas is not getting the aid the way it did before. So I think that these 3 efforts combined together are going to bring closer really a clear win against Hamas.
So from a military and security standpoint, I mean, what further objectives does the IDF have in Gaza in terms of fully dismantling Hamas? You mentioned 75% of Gaza. What about the remaining 25%?
So the reason why they did it in 2 phases is the issue of the hostages. We want to bring back all the hostages. It's a clear goal of war. And we understand that the hostages are situated in the remaining 25%. The pressure that is amounting on Hamas should bring Hamas at a certain stage to agree to a ceasefire. They will only agree to a ceasefire if they feel pressured enough with their back against the wall and desperately needing a ceasefire, even if it's a short one. The pressure will bring, hopefully, Hamas to this stage, and we'll have a hostage deal, which, of course, will prolong the time until we'll bring down Hamas as a military and governmental entity. So we're trying to move both goals simultaneously, destroying Hamas and creating the terms for a hostage deal that will bring at least half of the hostages back. And then the big challenge will be, how do we deal with the remaining 25%, and how do we release the remaining hostages?
And Israel has also confirmed that it's arming Gazan militias that run counter to Hamas. I mean, what do you think of this strategy? Can these militias even be trusted? Are they meant to replace Hamas in the future, or is this strategy likely to backfire?
So this really leads to a talk about the day after in Gaza. And the government said very clearly from the beginning, the day after Hamas, and there is no day after, which is not the day after Hamas, there will be no Hamas, no Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and also not the Palestinian Authority. So we need other options, and there are two options on the table. One is promoting Trump's plan of voluntary relocation of the Gazans. But again, I don't think that all the Gazans will leave Gaza. So what do you do with the remaining Gazans? And the answer is you have to build some kind of local leadership that will police the areas where the Gazans will be. And it's important to understand it's about policing. It's no rockets, no tunnels, no improvised explosive devices or anti-tank missiles. It's about really managing the everyday life of the Gazan society the day after Hamas. And for this, you need to build an alternative. And I think that the IDF, with the Shin Bet, and under the guidance of the government, is starting to build a replacement for Hamas that won't be Hamas, not Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and not Palestinian Authority.
And the question, of course, remains whether this alternative will be any better than Hamas. Brigadier General in the Reserves, Amil Avivi, thank you so much for your insights today.
My pleasure.
Israel Bonds, the heartbeat of solidarity, the powerhouse of support. When the Israeli-Hamas war hit, Israel Bonds stood tall, proving we're more than just an investment, we're a lifeline. Israel Bonds pledges to ensure Israel thrives and flourishes. Investing in Israel Bonds isn't just a financial move, it's a declaration for resilience, strength, and a better future for Israel. Join us and let solidarity echo through generations.
And amid nuclear talks with the United States and heightened tensions with Israel, the Islamic Republic of Iran is threatening to release a so-called treasure trove of secret Israeli documents that it claims to have obtained. All the details in the following report. The intelligence minister of the Islamic Republic of Iran, Ismail Khatib, announced on Sunday that sensitive Israeli documents obtained by Tehran would be unveiled soon. Describing the documents as a treasure trove, Khatib said the documents were related to Israel's nuclear program, its defensive capabilities, and its relations with the United States, Europe, and other countries.
گسترده همه جانبه پیچیده‌ای رو در این جهت برنامه‌ریزی شد که ابتدایش با شروع نفوذ و جذب منابع و دسترسی به منابع و افزایش دسترسی منابع بود و این امکان به وجود اومد که امروز به لطف الهی ما شاهد این گنجینه.
The full transfer of the documents to Tehran had been completed and said the methods of transfer would remain confidential and protected. Meanwhile, a new report by the International Atomic Energy Agency, or IAEA, disclosed that Iran carried out and covered up numerous implosion tests, which are key tests necessary for developing nuclear weapons, already back in 2003. According to the Washington-based Institute for Science and International Security think tank, which analyzed the IAEA report, 4 such tests were carried out. The report comes out amid Tehran's ongoing talks with the Trump administration to secure a new nuclear deal. Iran has maintained that its nuclear program is for peaceful and civilian purposes. However, the evidence points to the contrary. And as this new report suggests, implosion tests do not have any civilian uses. And moving on, the countdown to the 2025 Maccabiah Games in Israel is officially on. And ILTV is the official and only English broadcaster that will deliver it to you in real time. ILTV's Shosh Bedrosian was at the kickoff event with some of Israel's stars who say this year's game has incredible significance.
Mark your calendars for July 10th as the 2025 Maccabiah Games will officially be starting, also known as the Jewish Olympics, with 8,000 Jewish athletes from 55 different countries flying in to compete in the legendary games. The official kickoff event took place at Kfar Maccabiah, attended by more than 100 people, including ambassadors for this year's games. Peter Palchik, an Israeli Olympic medalist and ambassador for the 2025 Maccabiah Games, told ILTV why the Games hold so much significance this year.
These days, when it's so important, our representation out there in the world, we bring a lot of people here to Israel, the whole Jewish world, and this is very meaningful for me because I want that the whole world will know that we are strong and united together.
Especially through sports, right?
Exactly. This is my world. Yeah. This is my world. The world of sports, the world that that brings nations together. Doesn't matter, where you come from.
Despite the ongoing war in Gaza, it's the first time the Games are being held at a time like this in Israel's history. Ambassadors say the Games are more important than ever, as young Jews from around the world have been combating anti-Semitism for more than 20 months now. One of the main hosts for the Games, Asi Azar, says the Games are a time to uplift each other and celebrate, despite the hardship Jews are facing around the world.
I think that all Jews everywhere, the last 2 years were difficult, and to have the opportunity to unite together and to celebrate who we are is something that we really need right now. There is so much anti-Semitism everywhere and people feel alone in this experience, and we tell them, come here, you have a home here, you have a family here, and let's celebrate who we are together, and that's amazing that we have the opportunity to do it.
The Maccabiah Games is the third largest sporting event in the world, and the Games will be held in Tel Aviv, Jaffa, 100 years after the city hosted the inaugural event. Maccabiah ambassadors, Paralympic athlete Asaf Yassur and judoka Raz Hershko lit and held the symbolic torch.
The uniqueness of this Maccabiah comparing to others is the opportunity to, I think, send a message to the world that we are united, that Israel stands together with all of world Jewry, and we should not forget that in this time we run here in Israel the largest sporting event in the world in 2025. That's unique, and at the time where there is a feeling that we are attacked, that we stand by ourselves, there's nothing more important than this transformation of unity.
The Games officially begin on July 8th and will conclude on July 22nd.
And now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Cloudy skies are expected around most of the country tonight, with temperatures reaching lows of 22 degrees Celsius or 71 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow we'll see clear skies alongside hot temperatures with highs of 32 degrees Celsius or 89 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channel, subscribe to our newsletter, and explore our website, iltv.tv. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Lidar Gravelazi. Be well, stay safe, and thank you so much for watching.